Welcome back, friends. I'm B. O'Brien, and welcome to new friends as well. If you like these videos, make sure to massacre that damn annoying notification bell that everyone talks about and we're sick of hearing about. It's just the only way to make sure that you see the new content we put up. But enough of that. Let's get on with this episode of Horror History. By the time I started watching horror movies in the mid-90s, the icons of the 80s were all anybody I knew still bothered talking about. Because of this, I missed out on a ton of great horror movies. The world was a different place back then. No Netflix, no YouTube, barely an internet.
Here's Allison. Can you explain what internet is?
Browsing VHS artwork at the rental store or a friend's recommendations were really all I had to go on. And yes, they were still renting VHS tapes when I was in college. Thanks to the internet, there are plenty of recommendations out there now. Sometimes it's a complete waste of time. Other times, I'm pleasantly surprised, as I was with 1986's House. And why shouldn't House be great? It was directed by Steve Miner, director of Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3 and Halloween H2O. It was produced by Sean Cunningham, who brought us Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, the original Friday the 13th, and many more. The music was done by the great Harry Manfredini, who gave Jason Voorhees his signature sound. The cast includes the greatest American hero, Bull from Night Court, and Norm from Cheers. 80s kids will know who those people are. House was distributed by New World Pictures, B-movie king Roger Corman's company that would release Hellraiser in 1988. In true 80s horror fashion, House grossed over $20 million in 1986 on a budget of just $3 million. Now that's comparable to the biggest franchises of the era at a time when the craze was slowing down. So with that cast, those credits, and that success, I decided to check it out. It's currently streaming on Amazon Prime if you're interested. The house itself where the film takes place is gorgeous but spooky, kind of like my wife. It's very much a character on its own. There are a lot of ominous houses in classic horror, but this one is very striking and a stark contrast with the evil that resides within. Right away, we discover the woman who lived in the house has committed suicide, driven insane by the haunted house. Instead of selling the house, her nephew decides to move in. He's an accomplished horror author, oh Jesus, he should know better, working on a book about his experiences in Vietnam. Roger was raised by his aunt in the house and lived there with his ex-wife and son Jimmy before Jimmy disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Roger soon unravels the mysteries of the house and his son's disappearance while dealing with his troubling experiences in Vietnam. Though the story is heavy, the film is very much a horror comedy that in very small doses is reminiscent of Evil Dead 2. House even has a sense of humor about, well, the horror genre itself, like this book signing, similar to horror conventions where the most dedicated fans show up. One of these is played by Mindy Sterling, aka Frau Farbissina from the Austin Powers series. She's one of many familiar faces from movie buffs, like a police officer played by Stephen Williams who would eventually portray bounty hunter Creighton Duke in Jason Goes to Hell. Roger's attorney, played by a clean-shaven Steve Susskind, whom Friday the 13th fans will recognize as Harold from Part 3. Then there's Ron Carroll as a police officer investigating Jimmy's disappearance, oddly similar to his role in the finale of Friday the 13th.
We didn't find any boy.
House's Easter eggs make it a fun repeat watch. Roger's dreams, the set pieces, and other clues in the film feel like a puzzle gradually falling into place. Roger's mental state makes him an unreliable narrator, and the surreal events make you wonder if Roger is slowly going crazy. The ghosts are more strange than spooky, and the whimsical style predates fan-favorite films like Brain Dead and Killer Clowns from Outer Space by a few years. House does walk a fine line between horror and dark comedy. One minute, there's a ghoul's hand stuck to a kid's back. The next minute, you're on the edge of your seat as gremlins lead him up a chimney. After he's safe, Roger bathes the kid with a bloody cleanup sponge. It's a constant dance between tension and dark humor. Like, look at that kid's awesome mullet. Come to think of it, how did George Wendt get his hair so wavy?
So wavy.
splatter fans may be disappointed with the lack of gore, but there is plenty to love for old school effects fans. Stop motion, marionette puppets, makeup effects, and plenty of guy-in-a-suit monsters. Some are a bit hokey, but their over-the-top appearance distracts a bit from some of the more campy effects. Now, reviews for House are mixed. For some, the movie isn't enough of one genre or the other. Also, Cunningham has a habit of borrowing liberally from other successful films, and it is hard not to notice here.
I take back every bit of energy I gave you.
I'm not afraid of you anymore.
On its surface, House is a fun and cheesy horror comedy that tugs on your heartstrings a bit. It would be easy to stop there and just enjoy it at face value, but going deeper, you find a story about a veteran struggling with PTSD. People called it shell shock back then, but PTSD is something that wasn't nearly as understood as it is today. When I was a kid, my friend's dad would talk your ear off about history, politics, anything, but he wouldn't talk much about his time in Vietnam. And if he did, a cloud hung over him for a while. Like many survivors of trauma, Roger had troubling experiences and was just expected to get on with creating a normal life when he returned home from Vietnam. Though he does become a successful writer, Roger's life spins into disarray after the disappearance of his son Jimmy. He loses his family, his demons take his only mother figure from him, Roger darts around the house in the middle of the night as if he's still in the jungles of Southeast Asia. He's on prescription medication, he grows paranoid and depressed. He may not be hallucinating, but he can't trust his own mental state. In the end, Roger is able to overcome his past and regain his family, something many veterans are unable to do. House is part of an era that left behind technological tropes of the atomic age in favor of real-world issues cloaked in surrealism. A small-budget horror film that competed with industry titans of the era, House is an easily digestible story with a very poignant message at its core. Thank you for watching this episode of Horror History. I'm Bisho Brian.